Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everyone to part 2 of our Palestine Teach-In webinar series, Palestine Explained with Sister Hedab Tarifi. Please make sure to write down your questions in the Q&A chat box below. I have the honor of introducing our ICSC spokesperson and advocate for the human rights, freedom, and dignity of Palestinians, our beloved Sister Hedab Tarifi. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Erica. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. The Israel-Palestine issue appears, and I put an underline under appears, to be one of the most complicated issues of our time. The issue can be viewed as a dispute over land, religious clash, or a result of two groups of people caught up in a large institution of imperial powers. From the perspective of the American Muslim community, composed largely of diasporas from around the world, the Israel-Palestine issue is perhaps most understood as a strenuous struggle between the national aspirations of two people, particularly over land, the same land, Palestine. This conflict has lasted over 100 years and to many seems without a solution. The first step towards solving this conflict is a genuine understanding and acknowledgement of the historical origins of the conflict and perhaps a dialogue to arrive at a just solution. Of course, a dialogue will lead to strategy to end this conflict that has taken too many lives and has destabilized an entire region of a global significance. American religious communities, including Muslims, Jews, Christians, and other people of faith, have a responsibility to contribute to establishing peace. The objective of this presentation is to present the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, examining its origin, its major historical milestone, narrative, and perception of the conflict viewed from a Palestinian perspective. With that, allow me to start sharing my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. What we're going to cover in this presentation is a quick overview with, of course, the main goal is the history. I'm going to add some explanation of some terminologies that all of us need to understand what they mean when you hear them in the news or when they are mentioned in articles. We're going to talk at the end, why are we talking about Palestine? And I'm going to open at the end for questions and answers. So to start with, it's just to put a perspective as to where Palestine is. Looking at the map of the world, this is the map of the Middle East. This is Africa, this is Asia, and the connection between the border between Asia and Africa, that is historical Palestine. It's a tiny little land. So it's critical to start the historical context and placing the situation, the current situation that we're facing and we're seeing now with the history and the impact of the Zionism and their colonial displacement of Palestinians from the original historical Palestine. Sadly, colonialism and settler colonialism didn't start with Israel, and I hope that it ends with Israel. But it has its fingerprint all over the world, and it is sad that we are in the 21st century where we still have countries that are colonized, such as Palestine. Now, Palestine has been, throughout the history, had been invaded by different groups and different powers that came throughout the years, and it changed. It changed depending on who was more powerful to come and take it over from the previous occupiers. And as we see, as it started, the origin of the land with the inhabitants, their original inhabitants, and those are the Canaanites, the Canaanites. And after 4,000 years, we are ending with it being occupied by Israel. That doesn't mean that the population that has been from the beginning has changed. Of course, there are changes that any kind of occupation impact, not just the culture, but the population itself. But with Palestine, of course, we see that those changes throughout the years have not impacted the original inhabitants of the land, because they stay connected and they stay steadfast in staying in their land. The colonial Zionism started in Palestine, and we're going to talk, about the population in Palestine. But it's critical to understand what actually brought the Zionists to Palestine, and how Israel became the concept of a Jewish state for the Jews. In 1917, the British Foreign Secretary Sir Arthur James Balfour, in a letter dated November 2nd, 1917, and he addressed that letter to Lord Rothschild, stating that His Majesty government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for Jewish people. 1 second, I need to move this aside. And will use their endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. And of course, the declaration was approved by the cabinet. This was the beginning of a disaster for Palestinians, that the British mandate had decided to give the right to the Jews for a state in Palestine. And it's important to know that when Theodor Herzl, who is the founder of, or the founder of Zionism, and the one who actually started the campaign to create a state for Israel, Palestine initially was not even his first choice. When in 1897, they had the first Zionist Congress. They had it in Switzerland. Argentina actually was the first option. And when he reached out to Jews in Europe, even in the West, most of them didn't want to leave. They had already assimilated and they were having a good life. So he felt that he needed to change the concept so that he can actually attain the interest for other Jews throughout the world to come and immigrate to a land. And he thought Palestine, with its religious value to all Abrahamic faith, would be a good option and would be a good solution. And that's where he started lobbying. And of course, he lobbied the British, who actually were colonizing Palestine at the time. one of the important things that it's critical to pay attention to this declaration, which many people don't pay attention, is part of it does say that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. So the Israelis liked this declaration. They used it to create the state of Israel, but they certainly ignored this part that gives Palestinians, the inhabitants of the land, the right for their civil and religious freedom, which is unfortunately is not something that is adhered to or protected. We talked about the British were colonizing Palestine, and they're the one who gave that Balfour Declaration. It's important to know how did the British mandate over Palestine happened. And that mandate toward the end of the Ottoman Empire and after the First World War, there was, of course, an attempt of several countries in Europe to take over the land in the Middle East and divide it among themselves. And of course, Britain was given the mandate over Palestine. And that mandate continued until 1948, at the time when the declaration of the the creation of the State of Israel. And it's also important to know that Britain, as they were promising Palestine to the Jews, they were also promising Palestine to the Arabs. And there were several meetings between the British and at that time, the Emir of Mecca, who was overseeing Arabia, and all of those areas in the Arab world, they were looking for their own independence, and they were promised their independence. But among them was the area in Palestine, where the British promised the Arabs that Palestine will be independent. But in reality, they were promising the same thing for the Jews, and the Jews had more lobby to eventually in 1948 impact that world decision and end up dividing Palestine. The Nakba, that's another terminology that is important for us to understand. We hear it all the time. And, it means catastrophe in English, but the word in English doesn't give the same value and the same meaning as the Arabic word, because it's a destruction of life. It's a destruction of history. It's a destruction of aspiration of people and displacing them. And it does touch on the illegal forced displacement of people. And what happened during the Nakba, almost 800,000 Palestinians were displaced, forcefully displaced and expelled from their own homes and cities and towns. 500 plus Palestinian towns and villages were taken over, and the Israelis at the time were ethnically cleansed Palestinians and pushing them out of those towns and villages. And this mass displacement is a clear it fits the definition of ethnic cleansing. And even though Israelis deny that they killed Palestinians during 1948, they deny that they forcefully took over the land. but many historians, among them Jewish and Israeli historians, like, for example, Ilan Pappy, who is an Israeli Jew. He was born in Haifa, and he actually was the head of the Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Haifa. And in his book, Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, he actually just not only described, but he documented from the Israeli archive the Israeli practices during the war, and how they came about to create this Nakba for Palestinians. Of course, Palestinians do believe that the Nakba still continues. It's not just the Nakba of 1948, because from 1948 till now, Palestinians, even Palestinians under occupation, they continue being forcefully displaced and forcefully pushed out of their homes and their towns. And of course, what is happening in Gaza is another example. After 1948, with the United Nations rule to divide Palestine into Jewish and Arab areas, the years following the Nakba, they were really very very hard on Palestinians, and the Palestinians at that time, of course, they were displaced and they were pushed out of their homeland. Many from the area that now became Israel, they were pushed into the West Bank. The West Bank was under the control of Jordan, while Gaza was under the control of Egypt. And most of the people who actually were forced out of the areas in Palestine that became Israel, they continued being refugees. Even when they actually were forced, for example, those who are from Jaffa, Haifa, and the northern part, who either went to Lebanon or went to south to Gaza, they continued being refugees. So, and until now, as a matter of fact, Palestinians who are in the diaspora, unless they actually get citizenship of other countries, they continue being treated as refugees. Now, at the same time, the people who, some of the people, the Palestinians who actually it chose to stay in spite of the war and the push to have them leave their land, they persevered and they stayed. There was about 170,000 Palestinians who remained in their land, and eventually that land became Israel, so that Israeli citizenship in a way was forced on them. It's not that they chose it. They had no choice but to become Israeli citizens because the land became Israel. But that didn't mean that they were treated equally. Palestinians, especially in the West Bank, for example, were not even, they did not even fall under civic law. They were forced to have different rules and different laws, and they would actually be treated under military law versus civic law. Now, the refugee camps are a painful part of the Palestinian history. Of course, in 1948 with the Nakba, that was the first time Palestinians have to create refugee camps and refugee camps be created for them and for them to live in these camps. UNRWA actually was created specifically by the United Nations at that time to facilitate the needs for the Palestinian refugees. And these camps were created if you go to Jordan, you will find refugee camps for Palestinians. If you go to Lebanon, Syria, West Bank, even Gaza Strip, you will find refugee camps for those Palestinians who were ethnically cleansed in 1948, which is very sad that they became refugee and they're still in their own homeland. Now, UNRWA has a specific definition for Palestinian refugees, and their role, for example, now in Gaza, and this is critical because you listen to the news and you probably hear about United Nations and their work in Gaza and UNRWA in particular. Their role was to create facilities and help Palestinian refugees, with their needs. But now in Gaza, almost everybody is a refugee with the current situation and Israel pushing them south. So even citizens of Gaza now becoming refugee, and that creates more pressure on the United Nations and UNRWA to cover the needs for the Palestinians, especially when they depend on the United Nations relief and they depend on donation. And at the moment, they are unable to even, without the permission of Israel, to allow and bring these humanitarian needs into Gaza. Now, looking at the map, it's we talked about Theodor Herzl and the plan to create a state for Israel. Now, there were Jews in Palestine even before that whole idea of creating a homeland for Jews. For example, by 1895. The population in Palestine was about 500,000 Palestinians, and 80% were Muslims. There was another percentage of Christian Palestinians, and there was about 47,000 Palestinian Jews. And the population at that time were living peacefully and without any conflict. A lot of these Jews were either already during the different colonizations of Palestine, they chose Palestine as a safe place for them, or many have immigrated to Palestine, and many actually applied for refugee status in Palestine. And that is something that is critical to know, because you find, for example, Golda Meir, who was the prime minister of Israel, for a certain number of years before 1948, she actually was a Palestinian citizen carrying Palestinian passport. So the existence of Jews in Palestine was way before the whole idea of creating a state for the state of Israel. But the colonization of Palestine, it's important to know that it started before 1947. The British facilitated immigration of Jews, especially after World War II. They facilitated, and even after World War I, they facilitated immigration of Jews to Palestine, not for them to live and assimilate and become Palestinians, but they actually created specific areas for them in Palestine, and they were allowing them to carry arms, allowing them to organize and train, and that became the seed for when the war in 1947 happened. Palestinians did not have the same training or the same weapons. I can't even say military because Palestinians didn't have an army. So this is why the Arab countries came in an attempt to save Palestine. But unfortunately, in 1947, they were outnumbered for other reasons that we can discuss later. They lost the war, and we lost Palestine, where Palestine was under the United Nations rule to be divided between the Arabs and the Jews. The colonization of Palestine and the grabbing of the land continued even after the creation of the State of Israel. They did not obviously accept the borders that they were given, and they continued expanding. Of course, in 1967, they took over after their war with Egypt and Syria. They took over Sinai, West Bank, Jerusalem, the Golan Heights, and Gaza, of course. Now, the rule that the Israeli government had was mainly focused on grabbing land, and with it, displacing Palestinians. Their plan for creating settlements and expanding the control of Israel over Palestine. They did not really care for the laws and the resolution of the United Nations, and they continued expanding, kicking Palestinians out, displacing them, and just taking these lands, and sometimes building settlements that only a few people live in it, only for the sake of grabbing that land and labeling it as part of Israel. And that approach worked well for them throughout the so-called years of peace talk and peace negotiation, because it gave them the time to really continue taking over and grabbing and taking control over Palestinian lands by displacing Palestinians, kicking them out of their homes. And that continues till today, whether in Jerusalem or in the West Bank. You notice that, like this is in 1948. This white area is the West Bank. This small area here is Gaza. And then the expansion where in 1967, this whole area became Israel, and they took over Sinai and the Golan Heights. After the October War with Egypt eventually had a peace talk and peace agreement, and they took over their control over Sinai. But Israel continued her control over the Golan Heights, and they even went into southern Lebanon as well. So as we said, this is an area in the Middle East that is plagued with instability, and Israel constantly have issue with their neighboring countries, while they are abusing the rights of the Palestinians within the boundaries of Israel, West Bank, and Gaza. The whole plan of taking over, creating a state of Israel, and that is really coming to the light, especially now in the last few days. Their goal was to bring in Jewish immigrants and kick out Palestinians. So forced displacement, They didn't really care for where the Palestinians would go. They keep saying, why don't they go to the Arab countries? As if, to solve an issue, you would create more issues. And until today, Israel continues to give right to anyone who is Jewish. Anyone who is Jewish can come to Israel and immediately, declare right to become not just an Israeli, but declare right to the land and to all the benefits of being in the land, while a Palestinian who is born or has their families and is a descendant of families who lived in Palestine cannot have the same right, those who were displaced, they cannot come back. They don't have a right of return. And people who actually live inside the West Bank or inside Israel, they cannot even have the right to own their own property, because Israel denies them that, denies them to maintain, and use every law possible to discriminate and give Jews rights and take away Palestinian rights, in the aim to minimize the Palestinian population and increase the Jewish population. Now, Palestinians worldwide, the data that I'm showing, this report was made between 2019 and 2021. So some of the information is not fully up to date with the number, like now 12.7 million Palestinians worldwide. I think that number is a little bit more now. And 50% live in historical Palestine between West Bank, Gaza, and Israel, and 44% they live in Arab countries with different percentage of population. Before the Gulf War, there was more, but then after the Gulf War, many Palestinians they moved. Either some of them went back to Gaza, West Bank, and others went and found refuge in other countries like in Europe and the United States. Another terminology that I wanted to to share, because we all keep saying occupation, what it is and why it is something that the Palestinians are asking for an end to it. So according to Article 42 of the Hague Convention, occupied territory is considered occupied when it is actually placed under the authority of the hostile army. The civilian populations of occupied territories are protected by international human law and international human rights law. And there's a difference between the two. In the context of Palestine-Israel, the occupation refers to the Israeli regime of control over Palestinian and Syrian territories. If you remember, we mentioned the Golan Heights. It has occupied since 1967. And just a quick notice this is Naksa versus Nakba. Nakba is the catastrophe in 1948, which is a fully Palestinian term. Naksa refers to what happened after the 1967 war between Israel, Egypt, and Syria, when Sinai and Golan Heights, West Bank and Gaza were taken. So back to occupation. In law, occupation is assumed to be a temporary situation, and the occupying power is not permitted to actions that would change the political or demographic status of a territory, as Israel has attempted to do throughout its annexation. Throughout its annexation of East and I don't know why this thing is here. Here we go. East Jerusalem, Golan Heights, and throughout its construction of illegal settlements. So the occupation, an occupier takes over a land, and they are supposed to assimilate and take care of the people of the original people of the land. They're supposed to take care of them and their needs and not oppress them. Versus what Israel is doing, Israel is denying them the right and taking their land, annexing all these areas. So this is why it is called illegal occupation, because it has been since 1948 until today, and Palestinians are not given or getting their rights. The next few slides illustrate how Israel is an apartheid state. Their system of control over historic Palestine and how the military rules and impacts Palestinians' lives. Now, so Israel basically controls all areas of Palestinians' life, whether it is the land, the air, the sea, even after they left Gaza, where everybody says, oh, they left Gaza. Why is Gaza still under, siege and under the control of Israel? Because really, still Gaza is occupied. Israel has control over all aspects of a Palestinian life, and it controls the resources, the water. So Palestinians on their own land, whether in the West Bank or Gaza, they don't have access to their own underground water. It is even illegal for them to collect rainwater. This is the kind of discrimination laws that Israel has over Palestinians. Now, again, Palestinians, they don't have one area where they at least have connection and they can actually easily move from one to the other. The West Bank versus East Jerusalem versus Gaza, there is no connecting line that easily makes movement of Palestinians easy. So it is hard for them. You find people who have family members or they want to, get married. It is hard for them to even unite families because moving from one area to the other is not easy. Permits, if for example, Palestinians in East Jerusalem, if they leave it, they will not allow them back because their main goal is to deny them stay in the land so that they can take over the land. We'll skip this one. Again, we're talking about how they don't give rights for the same rights that Israelis have. They don't give the same rights to Palestinians. Palestinians really live under military rule. They are deprived. If you, as I mentioned, if you leave your home, you cannot come back to it. The system of law within Israel is based on discrimination. It discriminates against Arabs, against Palestinians, and it is aimed at making their lives tough and making it hard for them to live so that eventually they can not choose, but be forced out. Now, I'll skip this one. We talk about, not having Palestinians don't have the right to the same level of, education or to speak their, to speak about, they cannot even be free to express themselves. And anytime they criticize, they can actually be facing detention and imprisonment. inequality. Again, the system is so based on injustices against Palestinians and discrimination. They don't have the same equal economic rights. And the oppression that the Palestinians face cause them eventually to resist. And every time there's a resistance, or what we call an intifada, or an attempt to have these peace talks, it usually gives Israel more time to grab land and take away Palestinians' rights. The number of Palestinians being killed on a daily basis, the injustices that they face does not just impact their access to land, their access to resources, but it impacts their ability to live their daily life. Kids to go to school, they can get arrested, there are raids at night. It's hard for kids to even go to school peacefully without being afraid to be stopped at a checkpoint. And parents, the same, they have the same fear. They can't even, go to their work because they separate the land from where people live. So on a day-to-day, it is a struggle for Palestinians to live like normal people. Arrests, you see the number of prisoners who are children is staggering, that it is hard to imagine a kid who has no crime, even not, they used to say, okay, throwing stones, but sometimes they are arrested without the kids doing anything. And they take them to court. It's a military court. And many times when they go to court, they can interrogate the kid without the parents or without a lawyer there. They interrogate them in Hebrew, where the kids don't understand Hebrew, have them sign documents without knowing what they're signing on. And even when they go to court, because it's a military court, many times the court says, oh, it's a sealed document. So the Palestinians can't even tell what is their crime. What is it that they're tried for, and they can be in prison for not just for months, but for years. The mistreatment of Palestinian, whether kids or adults, even Israeli Center of Human Rights have been documenting Israel abuse of Palestinian rights. Israel continues to destroy homes and Palestinian homes and build settlements on the Palestinian lands. They take out resources. Water is a critical point because Palestine has a lot of underground water, and Israel denies Palestinians the right to even have access to their own water. Israel has had the support of the United States in the United Nations, where Israel is sadly always gets away with abusing United Nations rules and resolutions. It is the next to South Africa, as both of them were an apartheid states. Israel has the highest number of violations that are not sanctions. Israel always, United States always protects Israel by vetoing any attempt to criticize Israel or hold Israel accountable to their violations of human rights and their violations of UN resolutions. Again, Israel is always supported by the United States. The United States gives billions of dollars to support Israel and gives more money to Israel than it gives to all other countries in the world collectively. It's very interesting that the United States gives money to Israel for their for their army and their weapons, and Israel comes back and sells weapons to other countries, including the United States. India is the highest importer of arms production from Israel. Now, what is it that the Palestinians want? Of course, there's this whole talk about two-state solution, one-state solution. Palestinians have, whether they're those under occupation or Palestinians in the diaspora, have not had the opportunity for them to have a world conference to come together and decide for themselves self-determination of what is it that they want. So you hear about one-state solution, two-state solution, but the key, which is everybody agrees on, that Palestinians want equal rights. They want equal rights as citizens. Those who are in Israel, those who are in the West Bank, they want to be treated like other citizens of the land that they're in. An end to the occupation, which is, after 75 years, I think occupation should not even be allowed to exist. And that's the main demand for Palestinians. And of course, return for refugees. Every person, according to the United Nations universal right for people, people have the right to go back to their homes. This is a list of summary of these rights that people Palestinians are demanding for. And it can be it can be at the moment, the hope is that some pressure from the world on Israel to force Israel to treat Palestinians humanely and give them the rights and the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, and give Palestinians the right to self-determination and a state of their own. Interestingly, every year, the United Nations General Assembly, in its attempt to stress its demand for an immediate and complete cessation of all Israeli settlements activity, which all these settlements are illegal because they are built on Palestinian annexed land. Now, in 2018, only 6 countries opposed this demand, according to the UN Resolution 7398. And these are the countries, and I want you to just quickly see which ones. USA, we know. Canada, we know. Israel, of course. But these are 3 little islands in the Pacific Ocean. One of them is a population of 12,000 people. The highest is a population of 112,000 people. Imagine these 3 countries voting against forcing Israel to end its illegal creation and building of settlements over Palestinian land. One point to pay attention to, in 1948, with all the displacement of Palestinians and the towns and the villages where Palestinians were evicted and forcefully evicted and ethnically cleansed, many of those villages are left without any kind of development. So if you say the land is not enough, that is false. Palestinians can, and there is space on the land for Palestinians to go back. So why are we having this presentation, and what do the Palestinians need from the world? It is key for all of us to understand and educate ourselves, especially now when this is the topic on everybody's mind, and we hear it. We hear it in the news, and it's important to understand the history and understand those terminologies And of course, this is just barely touching the surface. But for us to be able to be critical in how we evaluate the news we get and understand so that we can take a position and know what is being falsely presented to us, which is sad through the Western media, versus other sources of information. And what Palestinians ask from the world, besides educating themselves, is supporting their aspiration for peace. And of course, for this peace to happen, there has to be justice for the Palestinians, especially in our faith. You know, it's not a slogan for when you hear there's no justice, no peace, because peace needs a foundation, and justice is that foundation for peace to be attained. Of course, Jerusalem is the first Qibla for Muslims. It is the third holiest place, and this whole area, this is the Dome of the Rock, this is Al-Aqsa, and this whole area, the Haram al-Sharif, is as mentioned in Surah Al-Isra, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed. So we as Muslims not only know the value, but because of the religious value of this of Jerusalem to Muslims, it is important for us to understand the history and to call for justice for the Palestinians and freedom for Palestine. Just a quick one. We talked about the loss of the Palestinian land, but I wanted you here. This is a closer look at where is the West Bank and where is Gaza. Gaza is this tiny little place, especially that's now in the news. When you see the whole world is supporting Israel, and Israel bombing constantly and displacing 1.9 million of the 2.4 million population of Gaza from this space, you wonder, you know, what is going on? This is a larger look, a larger image of Gaza. And most of the attack at the beginning was in the northern part. This is the Gaza city. And they were pushing Palestinians to go south. This is Khan Yunis, and this is Rafah, the border with Egypt. So it's good to have a perspective. And one other point, which is critical to know, there are a lot of refugee camps in Gaza. Those Palestinians who were ethnically cleansed in 1948 and went to Gaza, they set up, and United Nations, UNRWA, set up these refugee camps, like, you know, Mukhayyam al-Shati, Mukhayyam Jabalia. So there are a lot of these refugee camps that Israel is bombing them right and left. And there are a lot of those areas are considered United Nations. So schools, for example, that are United Nations schools that Palestinians seek refuge in, thinking that it's a United Nations, it's safer for them, even though, imagine, you know, having thousands of people living in a school, but yet even that is not safe. It is hard for us to see the rebels and see what the Palestinians in Gaza are left to live on. This was a list of children who were killed in 2014 in Israel during Israel attack on Gaza. And sadly, this is small number to what we're facing now in Israel's genocide on Gaza. Kids, of course, are inflicted. You know, they don't have means to play and live their age as kids, and even their games is impacted by the environment. So we're talking about mental health and how mental health impacts a person's well-being, but yet they have no access. They have no access to normal way of life and happy childhood for the kids, or how to express themselves and be happy. But in spite of it, sometime you see them, families, they try their best. This is, imagine two girls playing, their father is giving them the opportunity to play, and look at the rubble around them. Palestinians want the opportunity to live a happy life and enjoy life like everybody. So I end with saying Palestinians deserve to live, and it is us who must give them the hope for these kids to have a normal childhood so that they can have a future that we all need to do our best. And as I said, let's educate ourselves, let's take a stand, and let's do everything possible to give these kids a chance for life and a chance for a better future. I'd like to end with this picture. This is my birthplace. And I hope one day I will be able to go back to. So 4 more minutes. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so there are no questions right now. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. Oh, wait, here we go. Okay, never mind. Someone's just saying Jazakallah khair.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? If you have a question, instead of raising your hand, please type it in the Q&A chat.
While people are thinking about it, okay, is there another question?
Oh, wait, there is now. Okay.
Oh, it's a comment. Oh, Dr. Zaman, it's been a while. Yes. Let me read the comment. This is efforts by John Nelson Darby and the Plymouth Brethren led to the restoration of the Jews to Palestine under William Hitchler, who inspired Theodor Herzl and Jewish Zionist leaders like Chaim Weizmann and Nahum Sokolov, who drafted a text for the sympathetic signature of the British Foreign Secretary that became the Balfour Declaration in 1917 and the creation of the State of Israel. That's a detailed point which I appreciate you sharing, Dr. Zaman. I tried my best to cover as much as possible for people to have a high level understanding. I did not want to go into the details of the influence that the Zionist Congress at the time and Theodor Herzl had, because we definitely can dig deep and get more details, which I encourage everybody to educate themselves. I mentioned Ilan Pappy. He is a Jewish historian, but then there is Rashid Khaldi. He is a Palestinian historian, and he's a professor who took over the seat of Edward Said. Edward Said is another Palestinian Christian historian. The resources are out there, and I encourage you all to read because it is critical. I mean, at this time, we cannot say we didn't know. And the genocide that is taking place in Gaza, it is man-made, but we have the responsibility to speak against it. But it would always help to come from a stand of knowledge and a stand of ethics and a stand of religion, that all these foundations make our voice strong to say enough is enough. It is time for ceasefire, but it's time to end the occupation and for Palestinians to be free and have their ability and their right for self-determination. And with that, it is 8:15. I want to thank you all, and may Allah bless each and every one of you.
So there are a few comments. Someone said, thank you for a wonderful and educational presentation. This was a favor to the fifth column the British had established in Germany through German Jews. And then someone made a comment, there is need for the Museum of Nakba, similar to the Museum of Holocaust in New York. I definitely agree with that.
Yes,
And,
yes. I am with you. We definitely need to document. And sadly, as I said, the Nakba continues. And hopefully after this genocide, we can put an end to it. But let's all pray for a peaceful ending.
inshallah. And I want to thank you so much. Many heartfelt thanks to you, Sister Hedab Tarifi, for this enlightening teaching and very heartfelt teaching this evening. Please join us next Friday at the same time, 7:15 p.m. for part 3 of our Palestine teaching webinar series, Protecting Your Civil Rights During These Troubled Times, with Sister Kim Kesrelovich, and it will be the same Zoom link. And I want to thank all of you for joining this evening. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you and your loved ones with the best in this life and the next. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.